Hello, my name's Dan. I'm the Secretary of the Young Fabian Communication Network. This is the first in our webcast series. Today I'll be interviewing Martin Edobor. We'll be talking all things EU referendum, Jeremy Corbyn's leadership and Trident, as well as a few things which are going on at the moment with the Labour Party and the Fabian Society. I'm here with Martin Edobor, Chair of the Young Fabian Society. We're going to talk today about the Fabian Society, some wider things going on within the Labour Party and what to look out for with the Labour Party and the Young Fabians. So firstly, Martin, Purdah has been called for the EU referendum.
Yes, it has. It has.
Boris Johnson's getting a lot of attention over at G7 for his remarks comparing Hitler to the EU. Do you think that Labour is doing enough to mobilise its opinion, and if so, is it enough to get the vote out?
Yeah, so, we're on such an interesting period in the run-up to the EU referendum, and, it's crucial to get the Labour vote out. I do think that the party was slow off the mark in terms of, getting into the debate, but I think Jeremy Corbyn has now very much started to make the case for the Labour case for staying in the European Union, and we've got battle bosses going around the country. Alan Johnson is doing a great job leading the Labour in campaign and speaking to people around the country, and in particularly the young people out there. The crucial thing is that the Labour vote will win it. We need to mobilise our voters up and around the country, and it's not going to be an easy task because many people are sceptical about the EU and do have concerns. But if we make the loud and strong Labour case, then it will make a difference. And what we are seeing now is that the party is bringing in heavyweights such as Gordon Brown, who spoke at the Fabian Society conference last week, to make that uniquely and very strong social democratic case for Britain staying in the EU.
What do you believe the case to be, the Labour case for the European Union? How would you get that across?
So it's simple. The European Union, despite its faults, has done so much tremendous amount of good in terms of creating the European Social Charter, enshrining worker rights, such as the European Working Time Directive, which states that employers can't overwork their employees, pay protection rights, gender equality. I could go on. The European Union has ensured that being a worker in Britain is good, and it protects workers from exploitative employers. In addition to that, there's other policy areas, such as LGBT rights that the European Union have helped on. It's this idea that if we left the EU, somehow workers' rights would be better, somehow working conditions would improve is false. If we had a Conservative majority government with Britain out of the EU, those rights aren't going to be around that much longer.
Completely agree. But as for those on the left who are worried about TTIP, what would you say to them?
TTIP is, a free trade agreement. I understand that there's a lot of concerns. I have my own concerns about certain aspects of TTIP. But one thing that we have to remember is that the European Union is a trading bloc. One of the benefits of us being in the European Union is that it allows Britain to trade and have access to this huge single market. In addition to that, the European Union have to be able to trade internationally with other global players like America, like some of the rising countries such as India and Brazil. And TTIP is a trade agreement between America and Europe. Some aspects of it isn't great, but I think that we have been given certain assurances. For example, the NHS will be hopefully protected, and the negotiations are ongoing. So I don't think we should be concerned regarding kind of TTIP. What we should be concerned about is protecting and preserving some of the rights that we have gained. For example, human rights, the European Convention on Human Rights, things like that we have gained through Europe that we may lose if we leave.
Just moving away from the EU, a little closer to home. Jeremy Corbyn yesterday called in some advisors to review the links between the Leader's Office and the Parliamentary Labour Party. There was some mudslinging at PMQs
Yeah.
as to your party split, no, your party split on Europe and Trident respectively. Is the Labour Party split? And if so, how can we overcome this to gain victory in 2020?
So, in terms of it's a very good question. Is the Labour Party split? First of all, if we compare and contrast with the Conservatives, we are way more united than they are currently.
Yeah.
You know, the Tories are divided over Europe. In addition to that, they're fundamentally divided on what path our country should take going forward. You know, we do have policy differences within our party, but, you know, for example, there are policy differences over Trident. We cannot deny that. There are small positive differences over the way we manage and move forward on the economy, but we are far more united at the moment, the Labour Party, than the Conservatives. However, you know, more unity is needed. That is for sure. And I'm, you know, a founding member of an organisation called Consensus, and we're working with, we are being led by you know, MPs such as Stephen Kinnock, John Crodas, and Seema Malhotra, and we are it's a non-aligned group aimed at uniting the various wings of the party and creating a common platform going forward into 2020. And what I would say is that, you know, it is very early in the parliamentary term, and what is needed is for all wings of the party to unite, to get their heads together and think about a common platform and set of policies that we can adopt and all be happy with going forward. I would say there are certain policy areas, such as Trident, which may be potentially irreconcilable because you have to be either pro or anti-Trident. But once we've had those debates and those discussions, and, you know, they've been had and then be settled, we can then come together through a common platform.
Just on Trident, do you think that the best way of overcoming it is to hold a free vote, or do you think that could lead to the kind of splits we're seeing in the Tory government at the moment?
Yeah. So with the issue of Trident, it's a very complicated policy area because, you know, on one hand, there are those who, you know, continue to, you know, say that they are anti-Trident based on a moral principle of being anti-nuclear weapons. We also have a wing of our party from the trade unions, for example, the GMB, who are very pro-Trident because of the jobs that are at our stake. And then the other element, which, you know, believe fundamentally in the power of deterrence and the importance of having our Trident nuclear weapons, because we currently live in an uncertain world. So, you know, in terms of whether there should be a free vote or not, in my view, the policy of our party is currently to renew the Trident nuclear weapons. You know, there was potentially going to be a debate at conference. I don't think it happened. That is our current policy. If a vote were to come in, you know, October, November, or, you know, after conference, then possibly there could be a vote at conference. If the vote were to be brought forward before conference, we would have to approach it with what our current policy is, and that's to renew Trident. Whether there will be a free vote or not will be determined by the leader's office, and that is all up to Jeremy Corbyn and his team to decide. But from my understanding and many people's understanding within the party is that our current policy is to renew Trident, and, you know, if a vote were to come tomorrow, that should be our policy.
If a vote were to come tomorrow, where would you stand on the divide?
Okay, that's a very interesting question. So as a Fabian, you know, my view is that the Labour Party has always been an internationalist party, a party which, you know, believes that we should have, you know, a strong army and defence, you know, in this, and it's no more important than it is today in the world we live. Personally, I am pro renewing Trident for a multitude of reasons. First of all, you know, I still think that nuclear deterrence is relevant today, and being a unilateralist doesn't really get us kind of anywhere in terms of kind of security. In addition to that, there are a huge amount of jobs at stake, and, you know, what are we going to do with those workers who rely on Trident for their, you know, daily living? Where are they going to go? We need to think about their jobs. And lastly, I think that Trident in its current form maybe there is room for discussion to discuss whether we should reform it, whether we should have 2 submarines, whether we should have a partnership with the French where we have rotating kind of submarine provision. I think there's a discussion to be had whether the form of trident we have at the moment is appropriate for the kind of modern age we live. However, I do think that fundamentally we should still have a nuclear deterrence because it is still relevant as a weapon today, and it's still important in light of the geopolitical situation we find ourselves in.
Okay, a strong case made there. Just on the Young Fabians themselves, so how would you describe the Young Fabians as an organisation?
The Young Fabians are, very interesting as an organisation. We have over 1,800 members around the country, and we are the youth section of the Fabian Society. And the Fabian Society, for those who are watching, is a centre-left think tank, one of the oldest think tanks in this country, founded in the late 19th century by intellectual thinkers such as Sidney and Beatrice Webb, H.G. Wells, and they came together to provide the intellectual foundation for what became the Labour movement, and was there in the founding of the Labour Party, hence why we are a socialist society with formal representation on the National Executive Committee of the Labour Party. The Young Fabians was established later on in the 1960s as a space where members under the age of 31 could come together, discuss policy, produce policy, and basically learn about the intellectual rigor of the policy making process, in addition to kind of campaigning on various issues and providing as a training ground for some of our most distinguished public figures and public servants within the Labour movement. Today, the Young Fabians is a different beast. It's a lot bigger. We have 7 policy networks ranging from law network to an international network to your communication networks, and we do a range of things such as international delegations, we run podcasts, we hold conferences, and the way I see the Young Fabians today is still that intellectual, training ground for kind of future kind of political leaders, but also I see it as a place where people can form lifelong networks and friendships that they can use going forward. And my term comes to an end as chair in late October, and it's great seeing the growth we've had throughout this year, and I'm sure that the Young Fabians will continue to grow stronger and stronger.
And what should we look out for in the near future?
In the near future, we have a whole range of things. So currently, we have a Defence and Security Review, which was launched by Emily Thornberry a few weeks ago, and that is being led by our Secretary, Ben West. And we also have a Women in Leadership program at the moment run by our Vice Chair, Ria Bernard, who is taking kind of the lead on highlighting the role of women in public life and also providing workshops for our women members.
And how much can you tell us about the US delegation at the moment?
Yes, that's something I almost forgot to mention. The US delegation is huge. It's been led by Victoria Desmond, who's on the international network, and also deputy led by Alex Gezard, and it's a great delegation. It's going to be 2. There's going to be one in late September, and another in November. And that delegation is basically the first delegation is going to lead a group of Young Fabians to the key battleground states where they're going to take the fight to Donald Trump. And the second delegation is being co-organised with the FWN and a few other key stakeholders, and that is going to be a general campaigning delegation in late November. The deadline, sadly, for the first delegation has closed, but there is going to be opportunities to hopefully go on the second delegation, which members will hear about soon.
Great. Well, thanks for coming to talk to us today, Martin.
No worries.
It's been a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure. Take care.